Start recording. Today's not too bad for us. All we have to do is finish up chapter 6, which is integumentary system. We got the main stuff done the other day, the skin and the different layers of the skin, the different layers of the epidermis. Did somebody say something? Oh, I thought I heard something. So we got like the skin stuff out of the way last week, and so we just got to do the other aspects of the integumentary system, like your hair, different glands that are associated with your skin. So we'll do those. So that shouldn't take too much time, and then we can talk about things as far as like what you need to study for, what you need to turn in, and all that good stuff. And then Thursday we're going to play Kahoots. So you'll have a lecture Kahoot, and you'll have a lab Kahoot. And then the exams will open after we play our games. I'll open the exams, and you'll have until the following Sunday to take them, which is Sunday, April 4th. So everybody kind of clear with that?
Yep.
I take silence as everything's good. All right, let's finish chapter 6, and then we can talk about everything. But we shouldn't be here the whole time tonight. You do have a lot of stuff coming up due though, so that's one thing I want to talk about today. All right, let's get off of this. Go into exam 2, lecture module 2, and integumentary system. Pull up that PowerPoint.
Are all the extra credits due this Sunday, the 28th, too?
No. Are you talking about the extra credits that are through Connect, where you answer like 15 questions and?
Yes.
No, I just put them all due at the end of the semester.
Oh, okay. I just want to make sure.
You can work on them at your own time, your own pace. Okay. Some of it might help you prepare for the test coming up. So if you want to do them now, okay. But just remember that all I can do for those extra credits is I can put what topics I want them to ask you questions about, but I can't. It may ask you a question about something we didn't cover. That's always a possibility. But I'm actually going to put up the extra credits for everything that's left, and you can just work on them whenever you want to, and whenever you do finish them, they should go directly over to your grade book. I just put a due date of like the very last possible day you can turn stuff in, which is Thursday, May 13th, if I'm not mistaken. And so you just work on those whenever you can. Can't believe it's almost April. Blows my mind. All right, let's see. Where's the PowerPoint at? All right, so chapter 5, integumentary system. We talked about what the integument is. That's your skin. It's just a different name for your skin. Study of dermatology, or a study of skin, and also associated structures is called dermatology. There's 2 layers to skin, epidermis and dermis, although they do include that third layer because there's really nowhere else to put it in the body. It's called the hypodermis, and you also hear it called subcutaneous fat or the subcutaneous layer. And then most of the other information that you have to know about the skin is focused on the top layer, which is the most superficial layer, which is the epidermis. And so you get into the story of a skin cell, how it's born down at the bottom, the stratum basale, and it migrates up towards the surface. And as it migrates towards the surface, it'll undergo a type of programmed cell death called apoptosis, right? But we call it keratinization. It's going to die and fill up with keratin. So the first 2 layers, the stratum basale and the stratum spinosum, those cells are still alive. And then when it hits this middle layer right here, the granulosum, that's when it starts to fill up with keratin, and the organelles will degrade away, and it will start the keratinization process, and then it will move up towards the top. If it's thick skin, there's going to be a fourth layer called the stratum lucidum. If it's thin skin, that layer is not there. Now, thick skin is just the palms of the hands and the soles of the feet. So everywhere else in the body, you're going to have 4 layers: basale, spinosum, granulosum, and then corneum. But on the palms of your hands and your soles of your feet, you're going to have an extra layer called the stratum lucidum. And you will see that question on the test. You know, which stratum or which layer of the epidermis is only found in thick skin. Now, once they reach the surface there, that's called the stratum corneum. They're going to be dead. They're going to be fully keratinized, and they're going to play your role. They're going to play their role of skin until something sloughs them off, something scrapes them off, which we call exfoliation. And that's kind of the story of a skin cell. Takes about 2 weeks or so, 2 to 4 weeks, they say usually. And so you kind of replace all your skin every month. I think we looked it up last week that you lose like 8 pounds of skin a year, that sort of thing. There's 3 different cells in skin that you have to know for the test. You got keratinocytes, that's skin cells. That's the medical term for a skin cell. Then you have melanocytes, which produce melanin. Melanin is one of the pigments that contributes to your skin color. It basically surrounds the DNA of your skin cells and absorbs the energy from ultraviolet light, so you don't get damage to your DNA. And then tactile cells are hooked up to nerves, and they are sensitive to touch. Those are the 3 types of cells you have to know. And we've already talked about that. As far as color goes, there's three primary pigments that contribute to skin color. Hemoglobin is what makes your blood red. So the reddish tinge that people have to their skin, especially in lighter skinned people, that's hemoglobin. Melanin is the darker, the brownish black pigment. That is very important for protecting your skin against ultraviolet light. And it's a major contributor to the color of your skin, color of your hair, and the color of your eyes. All those are influenced by melanin. And then carotene is a yellowish orange pigment that you get from eating certain vegetables like carrots, yellow vegetables. And once again, that a lot of times will show up more in lighter skinned people. So these 3 guys, the combination of them, which ones kind of shine through, allows you to have all these different shades of skin that color that we have. So make sure you know the 3 pigments and what color do they provide, okay, because you'll see that question. Then you got into the skin markings. Nevus is a fancy word for mole. It's basically a cluster of melanocytes. Freckles is where you have melanocytes sort of in hyperdrive. They're producing large amounts of melanin. And sometimes that can be genetic. You know, some people, have freckles that run in their family, or certain skin tones will have a higher incidence of freckles. And then sometimes freckles will be triggered by sunlight exposure. So if you get a sunburn, a lot of times you'll get freckles to develop in that area. Hemangiomas are the blood vessel tumors, the benign blood vessel tumors that are commonly called birthmarks. They may disappear, or they may persist through adulthood. And then you'll hear them called strawberries and wine stains, port wine stains. Friction ridges, the fancy word for fingerprints. They help with grip. So those are on your hands and your feet. And then the dermis is the still living part of your skin. It's the middle layer where you got all the nerves, blood vessels, glands, hair follicles. All those are in the dermis. And then we talked about lines of cleavage. Now underneath your skin, there are these bundles of fibers, collagen and elastic fibers that are running in certain directions. And depending on how an incision cuts your skin, that incision may pop open real far, and it may cause a wide or a big wound. Or if it cuts parallel to those cleavage lines, then the skin doesn't open up very far, and it's easier for it to heal. And a lot of times it don't leave a scar. If the cut is at a right angle, perpendicular to the lines of cleavage, when it severs those bundles, they kind of snap away from each other. They recoil away, and that opens up the wound farther. And that's a lot harder for it to heal. Sometimes you have to bring the skin back together using like sutures or staples or something like that. And then even if it does heal back, you may still be left with a scar depending on how bad the wound is. And there's are the patterns of the lines of cleavage. And surgeons, this is very important for surgeons to know, because if possible, they'd like to make a incision that's parallel to the lines of cleavage so you don't get that gaping wound and it won't leave a scar afterwards. Sometimes you can't help it. You have to do a vertical incision of the knee. And even though the cleavage lines are running horizontal, you still have to do a right angle cut along the tension lines. Then you got the hypodermis, which is underneath the dermis. So it's like epidermis, dermis, hypodermis. Also called subcutaneous fat. It's got fat in there, adipose tissue, and we use it for protection, energy storage, and also insulation. And that's a very common place to inject medicine because there's a nice rich blood supply down there. And then you also have certain drugs that are lipid soluble, and the fat helps the person absorb that. So you got your water soluble medications that the blood vessels will soak up because blood's mostly water. And then you have the lipid soluble medications that'll be absorbed by the fat really readily. So it's a good place to, and that's why you have what's called hypodermic needles, which are designed to penetrate down to that area. And so that's kind of where we stopped at. There was a section here about functions of the integumentary system. So I remember talking about that last week. And I think we stopped there. And so let's pick up here. There's nothing on your notes about nails. I'm not really going to test you about them. If you're interested, you can look at the anatomy here of a nail. But I figure we got enough information. So if we don't learn the parts of a nail, we'll be fine. But the nail is basically modified skin. It's a harder type of, it's keratin, but the way that the keratin's arranged is sort of like in these hardened plates. And they're at the ends of your fingers and toes. So nothing really there to talk about too much. And so you do have some information on your notes about hair, okay? And so I put some of them, it's not a whole lot if you look at it. There's just a little bit of information. But there's three basic parts to a hair, three basic zones. The bottom part where you have your stem cells, that's called the bulb. So that's down here towards the bottom. You got a blood supply there, you got a nerve supply, and you got your stem cells. And those stem cells are constantly dividing because, you'll lose hair. They say a typical person loses about 100 hairs a day. And then we like to cut our hair, and then it'll grow back because of those stem cells. And so the bulb is where the bulb is kind of the still living part of the hair. And then you have two regions where you have keratinized cells. And all it is basically is the root part of a hair hasn't broke the surface yet of the skin. So that's the part of the hair that's underneath the surface, the root. And then the part that does break the skin, the part that everybody sees, and the part that you trim and you cut or dye or whatever, that's the shaft. Okay, so you got the bulb, the still living part. And I even put in bold right there on the PowerPoint that it's the only region that has living cells. And those cells, just like the cells in the skin, will undergo keratinization as it grows out. The root consists of dead cells, but it just hasn't broke the surface yet. And then once it breaks the surface, we call it the shaft. Also, if you disturb the bulb, it hurts. That's why if you pull in a hair and it disturbs the bulb, there's nerves there, and so that hurts. Pulling hair hurts. Cutting hair doesn't because those cells are dead. And so that kind of gives you an idea of where the living cells are and where the dead cells are, depending on if there's pain when you disturb those cells. Pulling hair hurts, cutting hair doesn't. The hair follicle is basically an invagination of the epidermis, similar to a gland. A lot of glands, you'll have the cells on the surface, and there'll be a little pit like that. So you got that little invagination of the surface. And a hair follicle is just a little tube-like structure, a little sheath where the hair grows out of. And so not really a whole lot there. And there is actually a muscle. Now we're getting ready to get into muscles soon, okay? You're going to be learning some of the muscles of the body. And the muscles we're going to talk about is voluntary muscles primarily. But one type of muscle is called smooth muscle, and that's not consciously controlled by you. Those are what we call involuntary muscles. And we'll talk about them a little bit later, but these there is a muscle that's kind of hooked up to your hair follicles. And when certain situations, like certain emotional states, like fear or anger in some cases, or arousal, will cause contraction of that muscle. And when it pulls on the hair follicle, the hair stands up straight. And when the hair stands up straight, it kind of pulls on the skin, and the skin will be elevated around the hair, and we call that goosebumps or chicken skin. And these muscles here are the ones that are responsible for that. Also, certain environmental stimulations will also cause your hair to stand up. Like if cold air, a lot of times will cause you to get goosebumps. If something lightly touches certain parts of the body, like your neck, a lot of times that'll give you goosebumps along your arms. That muscle, kind of get used to this because you'll see this in a lot of the muscle names that we're going to be learning soon. A muscle name usually tells you something in the name. It might tell you where it's located at or what it does. In this case, what this muscle does is it tells you in the name what it does. Okay. Erector means to raise. It's the same kind of word as erect. Okay. Rectos right there, R-E-C, rectus. That means straighten, straight. Okay. You're going to see some muscle names coming up that have rectus in their name. But that root word right there means straight. Erect or erect means to stand up straight, basically. And pili or pili, a pilus or pilus, people pronounce it different ways. That's one of the words that we used to indicate a hair. Okay. So if erector means raise and pili or pilus means hair, then that tells you what the muscle does. It raises. It's the hair raising muscle. You actually see it a lot on like dogs and cats when they get pissed off. You'll see two dogs get around each other, and if they don't like each other, they'll get that patch of skin down towards their butt that will spike up. That's their erector pili muscles that are contracting due to fear or anger or fight or flight. It's kind of lost that function with humans, but it still has functions with thermoregulation and sort of making you aware that something's crawling on your skin. Sometimes you'll get those goosebumps lightly touching your skin. But that second word, like I said, I've heard it pronounced pili or pili, but that basically means hair. So you will see a question on the test. What is the name of the muscles that pull on hair follicles and cause your hair to stand up, which leads to goosebumps or chicken skin? Does anybody else have any other name for those? Like when you get goosebumps? We used to always call it either chicken skin or goosebumps. That's the only muscle you have to worry about right now. And then we'll learn more when we actually get into the muscle chapters. So he's the only one to worry about right now. Hair in general has a lot of different functions. Protection, the skin on the hair on top of your head sort of protects the top of your head from sunlight. People that are bald have to worry about getting sunburned on top of their head. They may even apply like sunscreen to the top of their head to protect against that. You can also put, it's kind of number 3 right there, heat retention. They say you lose a lot of hair, lose a lot of heat through your top of your head. So it's like your hair is a natural toboggan that sort of helps you retain heat. We can actually use certain hair on our body for facial expressions, your eyebrows. We can do different things with our eyebrows to do what's called nonverbal communication. It's one of the things I miss teaching remotely is I don't see that very often. I just look down and I just see your names. So sometimes when I'm in class, if I say something and I look out in the crowd and somebody's doing this, I might be like, you're not understanding that, are you? You're confused. It's very hard to get any nonverbal feedback when we're doing remotely. If you have your camera on like Megan does, I can kind of feed off of that. But that's one of the things I miss is being able to read the faces of the students as I'm explaining something to see if they're getting it or not. The facial expressions in there. Sensory reception, your hairs are hooked up to nerves. So whenever something disturbs the hair, you're going to feel that, whether it be the wind or whether it be something crawling up your leg like a tick, which are already out now. As soon as it got warm, here comes the ticks. And so you'll be sitting there watching TV and you'll feel something crawling up your leg and you look down and there's a tick down there. And visual ID, we like to be able to tell the age of somebody based on the color of their hair. You know, as you get older, you start developing a lot of gray hair. Some people out there are known for their hair in a lot of cases. You may even be known as the blonde, the redhead, you know, depending on, you hear stuff like that. I always ask students that if you were in a store and let's say that your significant other is somewhere in the store, like you're looking for him, okay? So you got you know, your significant other and you separated and went shopping, and now you're looking for him to try to find him. Do you think you can find your significant other strictly by the back of their head, like they're looking away from you? Do you think you can tell it's them because of their hairstyle or their hair color or that sort of thing? Sometimes you get fooled by that. Sometimes you don't. You'll walk up to somebody you think is, you know, somebody you know, and you see their face. You're like, oh, I'm sorry, I thought you was my aunt or something like that. But that's visual identification. Is that we have certain hairstyles, we have certain things about our hair that allows people to know it's us. Chemical signal dispersal, it's not as powerful with humans as it is with other animals, but we put off certain substances that are supposed to be released and actually act on other humans, and we call those pheromones. And that it's very important for a lot of animals because the scent, you know, like males can tell when a female's in heat by the pheromones she puts off. And so a lot of times when you have a cat that's in heat, the male cats will come to your house and start singing out the back door for her. Or your the male dogs in the neighborhood will come to your house whenever your female's in heat because she's putting off pheromones that they can pick up. Or even you can actually go to Cabela's and buy pheromones to attract the buck, you know, the deer. They call it estrus. The estrus is basically the discharge that a female animal puts off when they're ready to go. And you can buy that at Cabela's and use that to attract the buck. So it's kind of powerful, and you can smell it too. I don't know how many guys have ever smelled unneutered male cat pee, but it's quite pungent. Has a very strong ammonia type smell to it, you know, because a lot of animals will use urine to mark their territory, and so it has that smell. With humans, though, they think we still, you know, it's very subtle, but we still put off pheromones, and apparently other people can still pick up on them. It's just not as powerful. You know, for example, they say that men can actually tell when a woman's ovulating. She puts off a certain very subtle scent that they can pick up on, and they can tell that this woman's, you know, viable to be pregnant, to be impregnated. They actually think that pheromones are put off. The pheromones that are put off when a woman is ovulating is what causes women who live together over time, their monthly cycles will sync up. And they think it's because they're putting off pheromones that influence each other. And so over time, you'll get them having their periods at the same time. They'll synchronize their periods based off of that. So it's still out there. It's just not as powerful. And you'll read some articles that say that human pheromones are almost non-functional anymore. We have other ways that we attract each other, you know, whether it be through conversation or, you know, looks or whatever, a dancing ability. I don't know. But pheromones aren't as important to attraction as they are with other animal groups. I mean, sometimes a dog can pick up a mile away, can pick up a female dog in heat from like a mile away based off the scent that he's putting off. So that's kind of some of the functions of hair. I mean, we actually, if you think about it, we use our hair to put off scents that we hope other people like. You know, we put the shampoo in our hair, right? You know, you shampoo your hair or you spray stuff in your hair, and then those odor molecules are going off, and they're going off into the environment, and you're hoping people when they smell your hair are going to like what they smell. So it's kind of similar in a lot of ways. And I guess deodorant, if you have armpit hair, I guess it also helps put out a scent that maybe you hope that other people like. We'll talk about BO here in just a minute, actually. Hair color has a lot to do with melanin, but there's actually different kinds of melanin. You have what's called true melanin, which the prefix that means true is EU. And so you have what's called eumelanin, which is true melanin, and that is the black brown pigment. But there's actually another type of melanin that's produced by people with red hair, and that's called pheomelanin. And so that is the reddish type of melanin that you see with people with reddish hair. So it's just a different kind of melanin. So you got true melanin and you have pheomelanin. And then as you get older, you don't produce as much melanin in your hair as you did, and so your hair tends to gray as you get older. And so as the production of the pigment decreases, then your hair will turn gray, which mine should be coming up pretty soon. You know, one good thing about having a brother that's 10 years older than you is that you can kind of see what's going to happen to you in advance. And my brother's, he's got a lot of gray hair. And so I'm starting to get it, especially in the goatee area and the mustache area. I definitely have some gray hair starting, and some of it up in here. But it should be turning pretty soon. My dad is like a silver fox. His whole entire hair's silver. So it's definitely something that's going to happen to me very soon. My hair is going to start turning gray, and then eventually it's going to be all gray. Let's see. Hair growth. A typical hair usually lives about 5 years. It's somewhere between like 2 and 5 years, or 3 and 5 years. It'll go through an active phase where it's growing, and then it'll reach a point where it stops growing, and it kind of hangs out for a little bit, and then it falls out and gets replaced. That growing phase may be 2 to 5 years, and then it will enter into that sort of resting phase, which may last a couple months, and then it will be shed and then replaced again. Like I said earlier, a typical person loses about 100 hairs a day. That depends on several factors, but that's just an average. That's just a guesstimate that you usually put on there. Now, sometimes your stem cells, once they reach a point where they're either damaged or they're done, or they may even, your stem cells could possibly undergo a programmed cell death. And when that happens, that hair follicle is done producing a hair. And so a lot of times you do see, as you get older, it's another thing about getting old sucks, but as you get older, not only does your hair gray, lighten in color, but it will also thin out as less and less follicles produce hair. And you may even go through a balding process as you get older. And that's called alopecia. Okay, alopecia in general is just hair loss. Now, there's different things that can cause hair loss. But the loss of hair is called alopecia, and that will be on the test. You know, alopecia is the medical term for hair loss, or you know, the medical term for hair loss is, and then you pick the one from the multiple choice. There is a form of alopecia that it's not so much based on genetics. I mean, there's a little bit of genetic component, but it could be triggered by multiple things like hormone disruptions or iron deficiencies or even stress, where your hair falls out in clumps. And that's called alopecia areata. Alopecia areata, it's not just slowly over time you lose hair. It's coming out in big old chunks. You hear about it with people that are hyperthyroid. And like I said, there's sometimes when people are under extreme stress, it'll cause their hair to actually fall out in clumps. I don't know how many of you guys watch This Is Us TV show. But during one season, Deja, one of the girls on the show, she was undergoing a lot of stress, and it showed her like pulling hair out that was falling out of her head, and they were checking like the back of her head and finding like bald spots because she was losing hair because of the extreme stress of she was a foster kid and her mom, left her and her mom came back in her life and stuff like that. So there was a lot of like emotional stress going on with her, and it showed like these scenes of her losing hair because of that. Now, androgenic alopecia, that's what we commonly call male pattern baldness. And a lot of times the hair on the side will stay, which is always, I thought was always weird. The hair down here, a lot of times not affected, but then the hair up on the top of the head is. So a lot of times they'll do a comb over, or eventually they get to the point where they just shave it all. That happens too. But a lot of times you'll have the hair on the sides and they'll be missing hair on the top of it. There's a genetic factor there. And I have heard that you inherit through your mother's line male pattern baldness, but I don't know if that's true or not because, I keep hearing that, but my mom's brothers, maybe it skips a generation, but my mom's brothers, they're all bald. All my uncles on my mom's side are bald. And so I'm like, I hope I don't get that. And so far, so good. I'm not really losing. They were bald. I have a cousin who was bald by the time he was 25 years old. So that must have been one of those things I sidestepped, possibly. But there's genetic factors, there's hormonal factors, but some of that's built in. A lot of times if your dad has thinning hair or has male pattern baldness, then a lot of times that means you're going to have male pattern baldness as well. Now, my dad has a good scalp of hair, so maybe I inherited those genes, but all of my uncles on my mom's side, they're bald. You actually see that male pattern baldness, like sidestepping genes and stuff. You actually see it with the British royal because Prince William is balding, and then Prince Harry has a thick, full head of hair. Some people point to that and say that Prince Harry is not Prince Charles's son. I don't know, but you do see that they're showing a lot of pictures now of William and Harry together because it's like they're estranged from each other because of the whole deal. I don't pay attention to that, but I've seen a lot of pictures of them in the past few weeks, and you can see that Prince William is going bald, and Prince Harry has a full head of hair. If you're assuming that they have the same mom and dad. So luck of the draw with genetics sometimes happens. And like I said, sometimes you'll see it run in families. It really does depend. Hirsutism is kind of like the opposite of alopecia. That's when you have more hair grow than you want, especially in the female gender. This is usually due. You might hear it commonly called bearded lady syndrome or something like that. But a lot of times it'll be a female that has facial hair, and a lot of times it's a hormonal issue. Like there are certain endocrine disorders, endocrine hormones, but there are certain endocrine disorders that will cause facial hair to develop in a female. One of them is Addison's disease, which is an adrenal gland situation. They have an adrenal gland problem, and one of the symptoms of it is facial hair growth in a female. And then you have polycystic ovarian syndrome, PCOS. Polycystic ovarian syndrome causes an overproduction of male hormones, and it will cause hair growth in females. So you see that, but hirsutism is basically excessive hair growth, and not just excessive hair growth, but hair growth that's more along the male pattern, like the facial hair, and I guess the underarm hair and the chest hair, stuff like that. So you will see a question about alopecia, not so much the two types, but you will see a question of just alopecia in general being the medical term for hair loss. And you'll see a question about hirsutism too. So that's the two that you really want to make sure you know for the test. Anybody have any questions about hair before we move on to glands? All right. I try to help you out with the glands by associating a certain type of gland with a common thing that you hear about. For example, one type of gland is associated with body odor. One type of gland is associated with earwax. One type of gland is associated with acne. And that way you can make a connection between them. And that's how it's going to kind of be asked on the test too. On the test, I'll say which type of sweat gland is associated with this or that. So that's kind of what you want to focus on. And I put, if you notice there on your notes, I kind of underlined the information that is kind of important as far as preparing for the test, because that's how I like to associate them on the test. Is I'll ask you which one is related to this and which one's related to that. Okay. But there's different kinds of glands that are related to the skin, and they're modified skin. It's epithelial tissue modified to produce and create a particular substance. And one of them is called sweat glands, but there's actually different kinds of sweat glands. And so the whole merocrine or merocrine, people pronounce that different ways. And then you have what's called apocrine, apocrine, or apocrine. And like I said, you can go on a website and say, how do you pronounce this word? And they'll give you 3 different pronunciations. So whether you pronounce it merocrine, merocrine, or merocrine, it's the same thing. And then apocrine, 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 whatever. But those are your 2 types of sweat glands right there. Merocrine sweat glands are what we think of as sweat glands, the ones that are involved with thermoregulation. And so those are the most numerous sweat glands. They're all over the place except for a few places. And they produce sweat whenever you get hot. And the job of these American sweat glands is to cool your body down. So they're what we think of as sweat glands. You know, the sweat they produce, the substance they produce is mostly water with some other stuff in there like salts, waste products, things like that. And then they deposit it onto the skin, it evaporates off, and as it evaporates off, it cools the body down. So that's the ones we associate with sweat. Merocrine. That's how I say it. American, kind of like America. Merocrine. But you might hear it called merocrine or merocrine. Then you have another type of sweat glands called apocrine sweat glands or apocrine, apocrine, however you want to say it. Now, these are found in clusters in your body. And so places where you have clusters of hair is where you'll find these apocrine glands concentrated. So places like the armpits, the groin area, the chest around the nipple, and then the anal area. That's where these apocrine glands are. The solution or the secretion they produce is it's a thicker, cloudier, sort of milkier type of sweat. Okay, so it's not like the clear, watery sweat that we use to cool our body down. It's a little bit different. It's thicker. That's what viscous means. It's just thicker. It's cloudier. It has more proteins and lipids than regular sweat does. Now the discharge, instead of it being released onto the surface of the skin like the other sweat glands are, these are released into the hair follicles, and they may play a role in keeping your hair healthy. Keep it from drying out, keep it from becoming brittle. They also may talking about the pheromones earlier, putting off a scent. These guys may have a role to play in that as well, because they have those chemicals in there. The problem though is when you produce sweat with these glands, that high protein content and the high lipid content, that's like a buffet for bacteria. Bacteria love to feed on the secretions of these glands. And then when they feed on these secretions, they release gases that have like sulfur in them, and that's what makes us stink. So when you talk about body odor, it's not really what you're producing that makes it smell. It's when the bacteria feed on those secretions, and then they produce and release gases. That's what makes it smell. And so these are the glands that are associated with body odor. And that's how it'll be asked on the test. Apocrine glands, body odor. So you make a little flashcard basically. Apocrine, body odor. And we start producing these secretions in high amounts, especially about puberty, because there is a hormonal influence to it. And I don't know how many of you guys have had kids, but there is an age, if it don't really matter if it's male or female kids, but there's an age where you kind of have to have the talk with them. Like, hey, I think you need to start wearing deodorant. I mean, because usually it's around like 9, 10 years old. They'll be playing, they'll be sweating, and then you can start smelling it, and you go, time to wear deodorant. So you start introducing them to that, and because as they move into teenage years, it's just going to get worse. Anybody have any questions about the two types of sweat glands? You got your merocrine, which is what we think of as sweat, temperature regulation, cooling the body down. And then you have apocrine glands, which is what makes you smell. That's why we wear deodorant. Body sprays and deodorant is due to apocrine sweat glands. Sebaceous glands also, number 2 there, sebaceous glands also switch into hyperdrive when you reach puberty. The secretion they produce, it's called sebum. It's an oil, but some people, the sebum they produce is thicker and more solid, and so it's more of a waxy type of consistency to it. And so depending on if you produce the oily type or the waxy type, a lot of times that determines how clogged your pores get, essentially. Now, sebum has beneficial functions. It's a lubricant for skin and hair. It kills bacteria, so that it keeps the bacterial infections and stuff down. And it's supposed to help also sort of hydrate the hair, protect the hair, and keep it from drying out. It's just we associate acne with it because those oily secretions or those waxy secretions will clog hair follicles and clog pores. And then we have pimples, zits, acne, whatever you want to call it. So these guys really kick in the hyperdrive when you hit puberty. And so that's what you should associate with them, sebaceous glands, is acne. Ceruminous, cerumen or cerumen. I've seen videos that pronounced it both ways, okay? But cerumen or cerumen is the fancy term for earwax. So you got these glands in your ears, and they produce earwax. And the earwax, once again, has a beneficial role. It's actually part of immune function. Earwax will help keep bacterial counts in your ears down. And so it's there to limit infection primarily. And it also helps lubricate structures. But it has a role, earwax does, when it comes to the functioning of the body. But it's modified sweat glands, and they produce a more waxy substance. And so we call them ceruminous glands, but you should associate ceruminous glands with earwax. And then you have mammary glands, which are also modified sweat glands. They're just modified to produce milk for nourishing the babies. And so the mammary glands are in the breasts. And we talk next semester about hormones that influence the development of mammary glands and the production of milk and the release of milk and all that. That'll come a little bit later. And we also obviously talk about mammary glands when we get to the reproductive system next semester as well. Mammary glands is where we get the term mammal from. We're part of a group of animals called mammals, and one of the defining characteristics of mammals is they produce milk. They have mammary glands, and they produce milk to nourish their offspring. And they have fur. That's usually like the two primary criteria for mammals is they produce fur and they produce milk to nourish their offspring. They have mammary glands. So just associate all those with make 5 flashcards. American glands, sweat, cooling the body down, thermoregulation. Apocrine glands, body odor. Sebaceous glands, acne. ceruminous glands, earwax, mammary glands, milk. Then you'll be fine there. We good? All right. Let's talk about some stuff. That didn't take long. Let's see. Let's get out of the PowerPoint here. I added, so first of all, let's stay on lecture for a minute. Okay, let's talk about lecture right now. So go into exam 2 and then lecture module 2. So we talked about this last week, but I want to make sure everybody understands what's going on here. There's going to be 3 chapters on the test. Okay, chapters 4, 5, and 6. That's cells, chapter 4, cells, chapter 5, tissues, and then chapter 6, the integumentary system. Now there's 2 other chapters that we're going to cover, okay, with a take-home portion of the test, okay, an open note portion. And that's chapters 7 and 9, which 7 is like an introduction to bones and cartilage, and then 9 is articulations. So we're going to cover those 2 chapters with this right here. This is part of your test. Okay, it's just the open note take-home part, but it's right here. And so you got your note pages there, and all the answers, as far as I know, all the answers can be found in those note pages. If for some reason there isn't, it can't be, then you can use the internet or whatever. It doesn't matter. But it should, all those questions should be answered by the note pages, unless I made a mistake somewhere, which is possible. You do have the PowerPoint here, which also has information very similar to the note pages. And then there's recorded lectures that I made last year. If you want to watch them, you can. But here's the open note part of the test. So, whenever you want to start working on it. Now, it's not due until after the lecture test is due. So you can put it off until after you finish the actual 4, 5, and 6 part of the lecture test. It's up to you. I haven't looked, but some of you guys may already have this done for all I know. But you can work on it little by little. And so you can pull it up and you hit begin. And then you just start answering questions. And whenever you answer a question and you move on to the next one, it will save your progress. Notice it started me out at question 3 because I've already answered questions 1 and 2. So it does save your progress. If I would leave right now and come back in, it would start me out at question 3 again. So you can answer 1 or 2 questions, leave, come back in, answer a few more. There's 25 questions total, actually 24. There's 24 questions total, but they're worth a total of 50 points. So this will be 1/4 of your test will be this right here. So I would expect most people to do well on this part and sort of start out with 50 out of 50 or 48 out of 50 or something pretty close to that. Then you'll take the remaining 75 questions, and then you add those 2 together, and that's your test score. So 1/4 of your test is open notes. The other 3 chapters, the other 3/4 is going to be like a regular test. You'll need lockdown, you'll need monitor. I'll be watching you. You can't use notes for that part. But this right here is sort of like a take home. It's more like homework. I would consider this to be more like homework because you can work on it little by little. Now, at the end of question 25, so at the end of question 24, I should say, it says save and submit. Please do not hit that button until you are happy with all your answers. Because when you hit that save and submit button right there on question 24, it is gone, which means if you didn't answer something, sorry about your luck. Or if you meant to go back and check your answer for number 12 or whatever, and you didn't do it, sorry about your luck, okay? So make sure you don't submit it until you're happy with all your answers. And one of the questions is a short answer where you list something, and I have to hand grade that. So once you submit it, I'm gonna start looking at all the stuff I need to grade because it's not just your class, it's my other classes too. They're turning in stuff as well. And so if you've already turned in some of this stuff, I'm gonna start grading it, and that way you can get your test score. But that's due on the 6th, which is the Tuesday. It's a Tuesday. Everybody kind of understand what we're talking about here? Just do that on your own time. Work on it little by little.
I have a question.
Yeah.
It's not on this one, but it's on the lab one. I started doing it and I'm done with all the questions, but I think it's 6, 7, and 8 won't load at all for me. And I've even tried like not using my Wi-Fi, use my hotspot, use someone else's Wi-Fi.
The homework?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I don't know, because it won't let me answer them because it's not popping up the picture for me.
Does anybody else have that problem? Are you
So I have no
trying?
clue.
Nobody. I got to see if anybody else has even tried it yet. Has anybody else done the homework?
I have, and mine worked, but I'm not really sure.
I tell you what. Who had the issue? Who was it not showing up?
I did.
Who's I?
Kirsten, sorry.
Okay, yeah, your box isn't popping up for some reason. Usually when somebody talks, it pops up there. All right, so here's what you want to do. Okay, are you using the same browser? Like, are you?
I tried because I have a MacBook, so I tried my Safari or whatever, and then I also tried the Google Chrome.
Google Chrome should work.
That's what I thought too. I thought that maybe it could have just been the browser, but nothing's working. And I'm like, that's so weird because it's just those 3 questions. It let me answer all the other ones.
Okay. Trying to think of how I could possibly get around that. Usually, I was worried about like Internet Explorer. A lot of times, Internet Explorer is the one.
Yeah.
Maybe Firefox. Try it.
Okay, I can try a couple different ones and see. If not, I can just email you and let you know. And
yeah, usually Google Chrome, there isn't a problem.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
Is your internet access kind of spotty where you're at?
No, I have like the fastest internet. So I have no clue. Like I even tried like while I was down the road, like I used my hotspot on my phone, or like even tried Wi-Fi at like McDonald's and stuff, and nothing.
Okay, give me some time to try to figure out what to do there.
Okay, I can even send you a picture of it to show you kind of what it's doing too.
Okay, and if anything, I might be able to make some kind of like alternate type question.
Okay.
Because what it is it's the pictures, and I know it has to be.
Yeah, it's just the picture that won't pop up. Like it literally says what I'm supposed to do, but the picture just won't pop up.
Yeah, so something's going on with that picture. Okay, let me see how everybody else did with it. It could be just isolated to you.
Okay.
Yeah, give me a couple of days to figure that out. Now that's not due until the 4th, right?
Yeah, I don't think it's due for a while.
Yeah, just be patient with it. The other answers are saved, right? So yeah, just give me a few days to kind of figure out what we want to do there.
Okay, thank you.
And I'll get back to you on it. The study tools folder. So I'm in lecture still. Down here is the study tools folder, and you got YouTube videos you can watch. I did put in the chapter 6 study mates. Okay, now the study mates is a lot of definitions. Okay, so I kind of use the study mates for definitions and glossary, but those questions will be on the test. I'll ask you a lot of definition questions. What do we call the this? What do we call that? Or the cells that do this are called blank, whatever. So there is a lot of good stuff here in these study mates. Please make sure that you do those. Okay, and you can do them as many times as you want to. You can do the crossword puzzles, the fill in the blank, the pick a letter, the hangman stuff. But make sure you do those. You can do them as many times as you want to. I just put in the chapter 6 one earlier today. So you have the 3 chapters, and then these practice quizzes are multiple choice. So I kind of remember how I had like a little section on the study mate that had some multiple choice questions. It said quiz. I felt like instead of giving you too many places to go, I would just use the study mates for more of the definition type stuff, the terms and the glossary stuff. And then the practice quizzes there are more like multiple choice type questions. But you want to do both. Make sure you do both the study mates and the practice quizzes. And I think by doing the study mates, by doing the practice quizzes, and then playing the Kahoot game Thursday, you're going to get a really good look at what's going to be on the next test. Okay. Now, I can't give you the Kahoot game until we get done playing it. So once we get done playing it on Thursday, then I'll release that to you. It'll be right below this. I'll show it to you Thursday, but they'll be right below these practice quizzes. It'll say Kahoot game for lecture exam 2. So I think if you just over the next maybe week and a half, just kind of live in this folder here, doing these study mates as many times as you can, doing the practice quizzes, and then once you get the Kahoot game, doing that as many times as you can. It's not the end all be all, but it'll get you a really good start. And then you still want to review your notes. You still want to look at your note pages. You can always still print off the blank note sheets and practice filling them out. That always helps as well. But remember that you want to try to do as good as you can on this one, because the next exam, number 3, is open note, take home type. Well, not really take home, it's open notes. You'll have a time limit, but it'll be a pretty wide window of time. And so if you can get a good score on this, then hopefully the next test won't be that bad, because it is open notes. It'll be on bones and muscles. Lab. Okay, let's look at lab real quick. All right. Well, first of all, remember that I did put a little whiteboard snapshot of things that are due this coming Sunday. I know a lot of you guys have turned this stuff in already, which is good. Okay. If you haven't, try to get it done between now and Thursday or the end of the week, so that way you can focus on the test and get as much of these other things done as you can. And then you have, let's see, so you got lab reports for labs 3 and 4, homework based on lab 4. Oh, okay, that's the homework we're talking about. So I'll have to check that out this week so you can get it fixed. Okay, no big deal. So it looks like most of your stuff's going to be due March 28th. The virtual labs for 1 and 2, the lab reports for 3 and 4. So all your lab reports basically are due this Sunday. And we finished up the labs last week, so you've had plenty of time. You got your cell PowerPoint project. If you turn that in, I'm going to start looking at them and grading them. I got a lot of grading to do. That homework we was just now talking about, that's actually due Sunday. I thought it was due the 4th. I thought I changed it, but maybe I didn't. But anyways, if it's due the 28th, then I'll have to fix that little picture thing. And then extra credit, the transcription translation, where I gave you the DNA code and you got to turn into a little dad pun, little dad joke. That's due also this week. So a lot of stuff due Sunday. So get that stuff submitted, so that way you don't have to worry about it, and you can just focus on the test. Let's go into the labs. Here's the 4 labs that are going to be on the test, and there's that homework. Okay. And so, yeah, you're probably talking about, because everybody's test is going to be a little bit, no, everybody's, yeah. So let's go to question 8 or 9. You might be talking about something like that, where that picture just doesn't want to come up. I'd have to look at see, that was Kirsten, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
And that's what it is that won't pop up. It's 6, 7, and 8, I think, is the numbers it is.
So it might be this, where the file for some reason is like incompatible with your computer. I don't know why that would be, but
it's just so weird, because all the other questions were perfectly fine.
Keep trying. Well, yes, send me what you're seeing. It's always good for me to see what message you get.
Okay, I can do that.
Or to see what's going on there. That can help me out. So there's only 11 questions, but it's worth 20 points. So yeah, that's also one of those things where you can work on it little by little, answer a few questions, as long as you get it done by Sunday. Diffusion and osmosis. So here down here at the bottom, you got your study guide. So one of the things you want to do before you take your lab test is you want to get out your study guide and go through each lab and make sure that you understand this information, because you will see questions about it. Somebody asked, so let's see. Somebody asked last week if the body regions and things like that is multiple choice because they're worried about having to spell some of those big words and things. Most of it is multiple choice. I checked it this weekend. There's a couple places where you have to type in an answer, but those answers are not hard. Okay. So it looks like most of it where you have to identify regions and things like that, you're picking from choices. That's good. That's good for you guys. You don't have to spell. There's not too much you're going to have to spell. I did put something else with Lab 4. I did put, I had this document that I made. I don't remember where I made it or when I made it. I know where I made it, but I don't remember when I made it, but it was basically a checklist of the positions and the planes and the directional terms and the body regions and all that. And so I found that this weekend and I went ahead and put it in Lab 4. So if you go to Lab 4, where's it at? If you go into Lab 4 now and go down towards the bottom, there is a new document right here where it says checklist for Lab 4. And that's what it is. It's basically a checklist. And so you might want to print this off and kind of go through and make sure that you know the 3 positions, the 5 planes of sections, which sagittal is also called parasagittal. Then you have 10 directional terms that you need to know, and they're organized in 5 pairs of opposing terms. Then you have 27 body regions. That's the big part, is all these different body regions here. And then there's the part about the quadrants. You just do a vertical line through the belly button, horizontal line through the belly button, and it gives you 4 boxes. We call them quadrants. And then you can do the tic-tac-toe board right there, where this horizontal line here, let's get a different color. This line here is the bottom of the ribs. This line here is the top of the hips. And then these 2 lines are the middle of the clavicle, or the middle of the collarbone. It's called mid-clavicular lines. And so those are what you use as landmarks to create this tic-tac-toe board. And you will see questions similar to what you saw in your homework, where it said, click on the umbilical region. It gives you the tic-tac-toe board, but then you click on the box that corresponds to what it's asking you. So it may say click on the left lumbar region or something like that. You got to click on the correct box. Down here underneath there, I put some of the other names you see for some of these boxes, like the hypogastrics, also known as the pubic area, that area right there. The lumbar region is also called flank. I've also heard it called lateral region. And then down here, the iliac, you can also call it inguinal or groin area. Then it kind of gives you a list of the cavities, and it puts some of the organs that are in those cavities, because you will have a matching part where you match the cavity with the organ. So cranial cavity, brain; vertebral canal, spinal cord; mediastinum, heart; pulmonary cavity, lungs; and then abdominopelvic cavity could be any of those abdominal organs: stomach, spleen, liver, pancreas. All those guys are down there. And then as far as the serous membranes, that's the part where you have an organ in a cavity, and you'll have 2 membranes. One membrane lines the wall, the other membrane lines the organ, and then you have a space between them that's full of fluid. And that fluid helps to lubricate and cushion structures and things like that. They're called serous membranes. And there's one around the heart. It's called the pericardium. And there's one around the lungs. It's called the pleural, so the pleura. And there's one around your abdominal organs called the peritoneum. And we talk about all that later. Right now, all you have to know is that whenever you do have that serous membrane set up, the membrane that lines the wall, the word we use is parietal. So if it lines the wall of the heart that your cavity sits in, it'll be called the parietal pericardium. If it's around your lungs, it's called the parietal pleura. And if it's around your abdomen organs, they call it the parietal peritoneum. The word we use for the organ is visceral. So you got visceral pericardium, visceral pleura, visceral peritoneum, and then the space between them, and then you have fluid. So I put it right there. Serous membranes line the walls of cavities and the organs in those cavities. You got to know that parietal is the membrane that lines the wall, and then the visceral is the membrane that lines the organ. And that was also in your lab report, down towards the bottom. Everybody good? I mean, we're practically done for today. I don't, work on, use this time wisely, work on the stuff you have to turn in. Go ahead and get that stuff out of the way. And then we'll take our 2 Kahoot games, play them on Thursday. And I'm actually in the process, I found a Kahoot game that I had from a couple years ago it was for another class, but it basically is lab 4. The lab with the directional terms and the cuts and the body regions and all that. I actually have a Kahoot game that is just about that. That I'm just going to post it. Okay, so it'll say I want to add a few more things to it because it was for my 1 semester A&P class where they don't have to know as much as you guys do. And so I'm going to finish it up. Right now it has 23 questions. And I think I'm going to try to get 30 or 40 questions onto it, and then I'll post it. And it will just say Kahoot game for lab 4, and it'll just have questions about that. Now the Kahoot game we're going to play on Thursday is all 4 labs put together. And so I think your study guide and the Kahoot games will really get you prepared for the lab test as well. Any questions? All right. If anybody else runs into problems like Kirsten did with those pictures coming up, let me know. I just want to make sure. I mean, I'm sitting there thinking what could it be that's just you that's having that problem? Because if it's not the browser and it's not your internet, I'm almost at a loss for what could be causing that. Yeah, send me a picture.
I'm gonna try Firefox and then whatever it's called, and then if it still doesn't work, I'll send you a picture.
Well, and what I'm worried about is the test too, because the test is going to have pictures, and so.
Oh yeah.
You know what I mean? I did this stuff last semester. I'm trying to think of last semester there was anybody that had problems with the pictures. But yeah, we need to get it kind of fixed as soon as we can. So yeah, send me.
Was all the other pictures that you had showing up, Kirsten?
Yeah, everything works fine, but 7, 8, and 9.
Which
I was gonna say
is
maybe your graphic browser or graphic card or something might be messed up.
And that's the tic-tac-toe board of the abdominal cavity. So it could be those pictures what file they're under.
Yeah.
I'll have to see if they're JPEG versus whatever. And then we'll figure it out. But give me until Thursday to see what's going on.
And I'll try another browser, and if it doesn't work, then I'll just email you.
Okay, sounds good. Take a picture of it and let me know what it shows you when you try to pull it up.
Okay.
All right, guys. I'm done with you. No class at 7. So just prepare for the test, finish your work, and I'll see you back here at 5:30 on Thursday to play some Kahoot games.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye-bye. Have a good one. Holler at me if you need me.
I was going to ask you one thing.